Park, so we're here temporarily. So I'm in LA County, not the city for the moment.
You're not in the city of West Hollywood?
No, it's city of West Hollywood, but it's Los Angeles County.
Oh, yeah.
Not Los Angeles City.
Yeah, but they only provide service to them.
Right, exactly. City of West Hollywood.
It's 7:02, Patrick. Okay, how many times are we going to do that?
All right, thank you everybody for coming. Tonight we have a special guest lecturer, Terence Gomes, who is our Battalion 18 coordinator. And I'll turn it over to Terence.
Okay, let's get this going. Did you give me share screen? Oh, there. Did you do that?
You have it now.
Okay, hang on. Okay, were you sharing it for me? Is that what you did?
No, I just gave you co-host. You can share now.
Okay, because that's why it's not working. Okay. Let's try this now. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay. Are we seeing it now?
We're seeing your PowerPoint, not the presentation. There it is.
There. Okay, great. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Terence Gomes. I'm actually the LFD CERT Battalion 18 coordinator. I'm also a working EMT. I actually work for the studios, and I've actually been on many missions, whether it was in Texas, Louisiana, through the Midwest, been all over with different agencies and all that. So let's just get into what we're going to be doing tonight, and that is search and rescue operations. Our objective, basically have a few of them: identify size-up requirements, describe search techniques, use safe techniques for debris removal, use safe techniques for victim extraction, and also describe ways to protect rescuers. And that's the most important one, because if you're a rescuer and then become a victim at an event, it's not very good for anybody. 2 key reminders: scene safety and situational awareness. As long as you always keep those in the back of your mind and always remembering, is this scene safe? Am I able to proceed? And situational awareness, making sure that everything what's going on, both with yourself, with the person that you're partnered with, or even with who may be the victims. We want to make sure we're always on those 2 keys. Let's talk about protecting rescuers. And that starts with PPEs. Everybody knows what a PPE is, right? Personal protective equipment. And we start from head to toe. Helmets, and you want to buy the best. I mean, this is your life you're dealing with. And nothing against the city of Los Angeles, but the helmets that they give as a CERT graduate, I think have a lot to be desired. So maybe look at upgrading your helmet. So helmets, goggles, fitted. Now, a lot of people, especially which you know from during the pandemic, you were just handed a mask, and here you go. We know those masks are actually fitted. There are different size masks, and depending upon whether you have a beard or no beard, or you have a real small face or an oval face or a heart-shaped face, it does make a difference. And they do make different masks for that. So you want to make sure that your mask is fitted. Now, where I work at the studios, we have to go through a fitting to make sure our N95 masks actually fit properly. And there's a test for it. You also want gloves. I find the best gloves to either be either the cowhide or the goat skin seem to be the 2 best. I find the best deals, if you're a member of Costco, they seem to always carry the 3-pack, which are genuine cowhide leather, and they work very well. Steel-toed boots. You want that also, and they should have a steel shank built into them, because when you're doing search and rescue operations, Building materials could be down. There could be a nail that's sticking up. And if you don't have like a steel shank, that nail could go through your foot. And then always, and we're going to stress this throughout the presentation, is situational awareness. And we always want to make sure that we're fully aware what's going on. Also is search and, hang on, so let me get rid of this. With search and rescue in a disaster, let's talk about CERT teams, and we'll also include the NTP program in there also. You are there to assist with light search and rescue, and I mean light. And you'll also be possibly assigned to search a building. And when I say a building, that could include anything from a single family residence all the way up to a Class A office building. And when we talk about light search and rescue, that is CERT's job. With heavy rescue, collapsed buildings, or more than moderate damage, that's the LAFD and USAR, professionals only. Let's start about search and rescue and about victims. And this is just something to notice, that people trapped after a disaster can survive hours or even days. But also, the more quickly they are rescued, the better their chance of survival. Now, when we look at this particular victim, he is trapped. But if you notice, they're pushing fluids into him. That's what the bag in the front, it's an IV. So they're giving him liquids. They've also made him comfortable by putting in a pillow there. So even though they haven't brought in the heavy equipment yet, his chances of survival are great because they've already started giving him fluids so he won't get dehydrated. And then once the heavy equipment comes in so that they could actually do extraction there, they'll be able to get him out, and he'll probably have likely a very good outcome. Deciding to attempt rescues, there's actually 3 factors. The risks involved for the rescuer, greatest good for the greatest number, and also the resources available. So we always want to make sure, and you'll notice also through this presentation, there is always the 3 of something. So we're only going to be looking for it. Now on that slide, I have a picture of a window that has moisture on it. Does anybody know the significance during a disaster when you're doing search and rescue? What it means when you see moisture on a window when you're approaching the door? Anybody?
Somebody's breathing inside, breathing.
Fire?
I'm sorry, during, or who's speaking? I didn't hear you.
I said fire.
No, good guess though. Very good guess. Anybody else? Anybody? All right. What it means is that there's a natural gas leak inside the building, and the concentration inside of that building has gotten so great in the building that the natural gas has started to condense on the windows. And if you were to enter a building there and not realize, and remember situational awareness, so you don't realize that those windows has that moisture buildup on the window, and then you open the door, the introduction of oxygen into a gas-filled room can lead to an explosion and possibly killing you. So that's why we always want to have situational awareness and deciding to attempt a rescue. If you came up to a house, wherever you live, and you see that going on after an earthquake, that means that there's quite possibly a gas leak, and we don't want to open the door. We just want to tag the building that it wasn't searched, and we'll get more into the markings we put on buildings, and we also want to make sure, and we also, at that time, we would want to shut off the gas, and we'll talk more about whether we shut off utilities or not. Goals of search and rescue. So rescue greatest number in the shortest amount of time. Rescue walking wounded and likely trapped victims first. And remember, always protect the rescuer's safety, because as a rescuer, we want to make sure we're safe so that we could go and rescue other people and not become a victim. Effective search and rescue. It depends upon, and see, we got 3 things here: effective size up, rescuer safety, and also always with that rescuer safety, I always said throughout this presentation, we're going to be talking about situational awareness. Your head needs to be on a swivel when you are going through doing search, and also survivor safety. So those are the three things we want to make sure for effective search and rescue. And to search and rescue, it's actually two parts. There's the search part of it, and then there's the rescue part. And you may not always be able to do the rescue part because of something that's the issue that's going on in the particular location that you're at. So with the search, we want to assess damage and size up the situation. We want to locate victims, and we want to document the location as to what happened. And that's twofold. One, your scribe who's with your teams would be doing the documentation, but also marking the buildings, and we'll get into that. And the second half of that is the rescue, and that's extracting victims, triage stabilization, move the victims, and then mark locations as searched. So those are the things we want to do. Size up. It's very important to size up what the situation is, whether it's one building, two building, a block, or a whole neighborhood. And it's always a continuing process that we want to make sure we're always doing. And these are the 9 things we need to do. Always gather the facts, assess damage, consider probabilities, assess your situation, establish priorities, make decisions, develop a plan of action, take action, evaluate the progress, and then go right back to step 1 again. So it's always a continual process, and we'll be going through each and every one of these. Just before I go on, does anybody have any questions with what we've gone through so far? Patrick, do you see any hands up? Because I only see 4 or 5 people.
No hands up.
No hands up. Okay, so everybody's good? Am I going at a good speed? Too fast?
I appreciate it. Very informative. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because this can save your life. And I'm not kidding. This information can save your life during a disaster. So sizing up. I'm an old TV fan. I love Dragnet, Hawaii Five-0. I love it. So I kind of use some of the stuff in here, but let's gather the facts. The time of the event and the day of the week, it does make a difference. If it's on a weekend, what generally happens? Are there more people at home? Okay, if you shake your heads, I can see your heads. So yes. So more or less on the weekends, they're home. Where on a Wednesday during the week, unless they're a doctor and they're back from their golf game, they'll be at work more than likely. And this is post-COVID, or so that's what we're looking at. We're looking for the future. We're looking to be positive. So the time of the event and day of the week. Now we know, like most of our earthquakes that's ever happened in Southern California, generally happen early morning. 4 a.m., 3 a.m., whether it's a 71 or the Northridge earthquake, it all happened in early hours. We also look at construction type, and we'll get into some of the construction types. Also the terrain. If you're down at the beach, if there's an earthquake that happens, what is it that can happen from an earthquake that's off the coast of California? Tsunamis. Yes. Or if we're up in the foothill areas, if it's raining and then all of a sudden we have an earthquake, we could have liquefaction. So those are things we look at. Also the occupancy. How many people are actually in there? The weather. Is it pouring rain when an incident happens? And also the hazards. And there are many hazards, and we'll go through them. Assess the damage. And this is where we have to assess the damage and communicate to whoever we're reporting to. With the CERT team, it's one set of where we're reporting, and as the NTP, they report to different levels, and then it comes up. So we basically use a color code, just like a traffic light: green, yellow, and red. Light damage, we're okay with being able to assess that. Moderate damage, we're going to call it a wobbler. And that's why it's in yellow and red. Because if it's moderate low damage, we can assess it. If it's more damage than what a low moderate one is, it would then be where we assess it and we only enter if probability of victims. That's the only way. So if we don't think there's victims in there, or if there, and I'll just say it, if there are people who have expired or are dead in there, we don't rescue the dead. Because if there is somebody who has died in a building that's collapsed, or even if the building hasn't collapsed, we don't move them. They stay there. And the reason for that is because now it's a crime scene until otherwise determined by the coroner or PD that it wasn't a homicide. So that's why we leave it where it lies. And then major damage, do not enter at all. We stay away. So as I said, we got the green and as to severity, light damage, yes. Moderate damage, cautiously. Heavy damage, absolutely not. So stay away. And we'll see some pictures of what the different ones are. Light damage, they call it superficial damage. You know, we may have a couple broken window panes. We may have a little, if they have plaster in the house still, you know, because most houses are drywall unless they're, you know, from the 30s or the 40s. Minor damage to, even though this room looks bad, it's not really, because all that's happened is what? The furniture's turned over, and and because it's got a recessed ceiling, we've had a couple of the tiles come down. So it's safe to enter, remain, and search. Now let's get into the moderate damage. Now we see where we have more substantial damage. We have a lot of the ceiling falling down. Besides the furniture, we have broken glass. We have a lot of stuff that's going on here. So depending upon where it is and what it is, and if there's a victim in there or not, we may or may not go in there. And the more moderate damage, when we're in moderate damage, we also, the CERT mission is, if there's victims in there, we locate them. We treat the airway. How do we treat the airway? Anybody? Go, Ben.
See if they're breathing. If they're not breathing, tilt their head.
Right, head tilt, chin lift. That's what we do. You're absolutely correct on that. And then we check to see if they have any major bleeding. We want to stop that immediately, because if we don't stop that, they can go into shock. So we want to stop that. How many people here, underneath reactions, you can put, how many here have been to any of the stop the bleed classes, or have had a first aid class? So I know your level of expertise. Okay, some of you have, some of you haven't. I would highly recommend that you take the class. Even the simple stop the bleed and hands only CPR. It can really help you. And then if you want to start moving up, then take either a AHA or a Red Cross first aid training. They are great classes. Also within, if you take the retake the CERT training once they go live in person again, you'll also get first aid training there also. Okay, shock, and then we want to immediately evacuate. Second part is we want to warn others. So we want to tell people stay away, and we'll look at the markings and what we need to do for that. And always, as the process goes, we want to continue size up. We want to minimize the number of rescuers and the time spent inside the structure. So we want to get in and we want to get out, but we want to do a thorough search, and we'll go through what the process is for doing the search and how we perform it. Major damage. As we see, if you start seeing where there's cracks in the walls like that, or part of the building is coming off like that apartment building on the right, steer clear. We would then generally put yellow tape up to keep everybody away and wait for either LAFD or other, depending upon how long it's been into the incident, where there may be other jurisdictions coming in and helping, and they would take the lead. Okay, so major cracks, major damage to load-bearing columns or beams, large X-shaped cracks in the building exterior, and that's what they're talking about in that right photo. Also buildings leaning, also partial or total collapse. And when we see some of the collapses, the upper right-hand photo is a famous photo from Northridge. It's the Northridge Meadow Apartments, and they had a complete collapse on that building. The picture on the upper left, that's Kaiser Permanente in the valley. I forget where. I think that was Koreatown. Is the lower left picture, and the picture on the right is actually in Alaska. A lot of people don't realize how bad earthquakes are in Alaska through the fire rim up there. So yeah, as you can see, it's very bad. So these are kinds of buildings we don't go into. We steer clear as a CERT responder.
There's a question in the chat. What if someone's calling for help from one of those buildings?
Okay, if from, you mean one of those buildings? One of those buildings, Patrick?
I'm assuming from one of the heavily damaged buildings, yeah.
Yeah, from one of the heavily damaged, if they're calling for help, try to locate them, triangulate where they're at, using your voice and getting a response back, and communicate up your chain of command to get rescuers there. And also note if it's a CERT team, they would then put it in their logs and send it up the chain of command to comms, and then comms would send somebody out there and reassure them that you're aware of them out there and that help will be on the way. And that's what you would do, but you would not enter any of these buildings at all, ever. Because some of these buildings, like the Northridge Meadows, that one would need heavy equipment to be able to do the rescuing, and that's what they had used there. Even the garage at Kaiser, same thing. So let's talk about major damage and what you do. Okay, secure the building perimeter, and that would be with yellow tape. Vocal triage. Also, that's also, finding out what's wrong with them. I'm pinned down. My husband's had a heart attack, but I'm okay. Things like that. So we find out what the situation is so we know how to react. Again, do not enter the building at all costs. Do not enter. Alert comms, as I said, and then wait for heavy rescue teams to come and assure them that it's on the way. But also at the same time, you want to stay on post to make sure that others do not try to enter the building, but then also find out from comms what they want you to do, whether they want you to stay and secure or load and go to additional either buildings, houses, or wherever they have you searching. Shut off utilities. Everybody always asks me, should we just go shut off the utilities? We saw that at the Woolsey fire. There were volunteers there who wanted to go around for house to house to house and start shutting off utilities. Always, it may not be appropriate. At the Woolsey fire, the fire was burning so fast that people who wanted to go shut off utilities may have been caught up in the fire. The same thing. Should we be entering a house that has major damage to go shut off the utilities? Should we? Anybody? No, absolutely not. So you're right. So it's all about sizing up situational awareness and also the location of them. Here we have lower corner. Most of us who have gas service, so Southern California Gas, that is what the meter looks like, and they generally would have also an earthquake valve on it. The fire department, the LAFD CERT, through training through the CERT, does have those mocked up, and we can come to your community and do trainings. We have that, the electrical box, and the water shut off. So there are ways to shut off, and we can show you. We're not going to do it in this slide or in this presentation how to shut them off, but just do we shut off utilities? It's size up location and situational awareness. So we'll make sure of that, and we can come out and we'll do a presentation on how to shut off utilities and practice with you. Tools. Tools can save your life. First thing always is to have a pair of channel locks. Those are the blue handled pliers up in the upper right-hand corner. And the reason why I say that versus a crescent wrench, let's go back a slide. See the water valve I have marked with the red arrow? Does everybody know what a crescent wrench is, by the way? It's a tool. It's mainly used to move, to turn, I should say, not move, turn nuts and bolts, and it's adjustable. At one time, I guess they call them like monkey wrenches or that. It's kind of similar purpose. So with that though, we wouldn't be able to use an adjustable wrench on it. That's why we would be able to use the channel locks on them, because we could grab the wheel where the arrow's pointing and be able to turn it. Because to be honest with you, most residents have not turned that handle since they've owned the house, unless the plumber's been there. So those handles will be very stuck. And that's where LADWP wants you to shut off the water, is at the house and not at the meter. The next is the 4-in-1 earthquake or pry bars. That's the one down at the lower. Can you already see my cursor? Okay, this here is a pry bar. And I always say to have a small and a large. And when I say small, I mean like a 4-inch pry bar. And this here is a 12-inch Stanley Wonder bar. It is a great bar. And the reason why I say two, because sometimes like when a door is racked, and that means because of the earthquake, it's kind of tilted to one side and won't open. You may not be able to get the big bar in between the door and the jamb to get it open, but you could use that small pry bar to get in to jimmy it open and then get the bigger bar in there. Also, the 4-in-1 earthquake tool, that's this tool right here. And it has more than 4. This one's for the water shut off at the DWP meter. This one right here, depending upon how this valve is situated, it allows you to either open and close the valve here or with here. Also, this tool can be used to dig. So it's more than 4-in-1, but they call it a 4-in-1. You could dig with this, you could pry with it. There's a lot of things you could do with it. And then also a flashlight. This is the flashlight I actually use at work. It's an Inova 5800 looms. It's a very bright flashlight and it lasts for hours on rechargeable batteries. Buy the best equipment that you can afford. It can save your life, and that's all I gotta say. But these are the 4 main tools that should be in your pack. So a pair of channel locks. These are the 10-inch channel locks. You could also get 12-inch, but these are the 10-inch that I carry. I carry 2 pry bars. One is the Stanley Wonder Bar 12-inch, and then they make a little 4-inch that I carry also. 4-in-1 earthquake tool and the flashlight. And I don't carry batteries because this is a rechargeable flashlight. So I just carry the charger with me to be able to recharge them. It's a great flashlight, but whatever you do, get the best equipment you can because it can save your life. And I like the channel locks. I've had channel locks for years and they work great. Let's talk about the buildings, single family homes or dwellings. Generally wood frame. They'll usually have light damage to masonry and chimneys. Pre-1940 buildings, not all of the buildings have been bolted to their foundations. So there are a few you will see in an earthquake that will jump off and slide off their foundations. And then hillside, a ground failure and considerable damage. They may even come down the hill. Now, quick quiz. This picture right here of this home, what would you consider it? Light, moderate, or heavy damage? Anyone?
Heavy.
Good guess, but actually, no, it's actually light damage because all it did was the chimney fell down. And if you see the rest of the house, whether up here, the roof line, notice how the roof is still straight. It's not falling in. And all that's happened is the chimney, because I would say that this is probably a house that was probably looking at the way the bricks are and all that, probably in the late 50s. And they did reinforce it with rebar. And what happened was the chimney just peeled right off the house. But the house, you can see at the foundation down at the bottom, it's still secured. It's not buckled. Here's the actual brick facade on the front of it. You notice how it hasn't fallen off. It's not cracked. And remember what we said for heavy damage, if we see X cracks or that, we don't see that here. So the only thing they did was they yellow taped around it. So this would be considered more than likely light damage, because the only thing that happened was chimney fell down. But it's good to know, because at first sight, but that's the size up where we look at it and say, let me take a look at it and see what we actually have here. Pre-1933 unreinforced brick masonry. We see a lot of these. We see them in Hollywood. We see them in downtown LA. We still see some on the west side, although they are going away quicker than you could say redevelopment. So we probably won't see many of these on the west side. You still see some in the valley, but not too much, because there really wasn't much development out in the valley pre-1933. I mean, there were some areas, but most of it was orange groves and olive orchard. I guess an olive orchard, well, whatever, however you want to call for olives. So yeah, so it's bricks on edge every 5 to 7 rows. Expect heavy damage unless well reinforced. And even with the current regulations of the city of Los Angeles and the state of California, these buildings still fall down, even though they may be reinforced. And you've probably seen them before. When you see old brick buildings and they have the diamond-shaped steel plates with the where you see the nut and the bolt coming out of it, and you see a lot of them along the side. That's where they're trying to secure the floor to the side walls. But when there's a good shake, those walls are going to come down, because the bricks are not reinforced. There's no rebar. A rebar is steel rod through the centers of them to help secure them. Tilt-up structures. We're seeing a lot more of these going on, especially in the film industry. They're taking these and they're building studios because there's not enough studio space. So they're doing a lot of these in commercial zones, whether Amazon's there, Walmart, or any kind of warehouse distribution, UPS. They'll be in buildings like these. Expect heavy damage, because what happens is the way they manufacture these buildings is they put forms on the ground, they pour the concrete, they make it all smooth. Once it's hardened, they tilt it up, just as the name says, tilt up structures. So these walls would have been made on the ground, and then a crane comes in and tilts them up. And that's why there's these supports here to help secure them until the roof is in. And they have lightweight roofs. There's actually a video on YouTube where LA Fire is doing a size up on one of these style buildings, and one of the firefighters falls through the roof because they're very lightweight and they have a tendency to collapse. Steel frame high-rise buildings, usually light or moderate damage. Structures are reinforced. They're made to withstand earthquakes. Now, these are more of the modern ones that have been since the 80s. And main damage, you'll have broken glass. Sometimes the panels will pop out. Content movement, exterior trim facades will break. And you see, this is what basically happens in an office building. And to be quite honest with you, if they had these bookcases secured to the walls, they would have not have fallen down. Just one thing to know. Okay, search and rescue operations. Let's make rescuer safety primary concern. Use a team system, and this is the team system that, Patrick, you want to weigh in real quick on this, the damage assessment teams and the incident response teams? Sorry to cut you off guard. You there, Patrick? Patrick? We'll get back to Patrick. But anyway, remind me what we got to come back to that. Okay, be alert for hazards, always situational awareness. Use safety equipment. That's both PPEs, and that's, from head to toe, helmet, goggles, N95 mask, gloves, steel toe shoes, and situational awareness. Rotate the teams. We're not supermen or women, so we want to rotate the teams to get rest breaks and rehab. Locating victims. Now, this is very important when we want to try to locate victims, because a lot of people hide, or because of the bookcase falling down on them because they're in the bedroom, that's where they may be. Does anybody know where most children hide after a traumatic incident?
Under the bed?
In the closet. Bed is second if they're able to get under the bed, but otherwise they'll be in the closet. And if you enter a child's room, make sure to check the closet, because that's where children have a tendency to go. So we want to make sure on that. So we're going to identify some voids where victims may be. Also interview survivors. So when you're pulling somebody out, that's a survivor, the walking wounded. Ask them, who else was home? Do you know what bed? Were they in the bedroom? Were they in the kitchen? Where were they? And find out. And then you're able to estimate the victim's location, and also consider using a cell phone photos if there's somebody who's trapped, because it also gives situational awareness to the professionals to come in, what it actually looks like is going on. And let's look at different types of voids that may happen. And when we're conducting search operations, this one right here is called a pancake void. And it's where the side walls fall out and the floors come on top of each other. And that's what they call a pancake void. And there are people who can survive in this because there still is space here. So that is where, but this is major damage, and we don't go in major damage. Let's talk about this void right here. And it is called a lean-to void. You'll see this a lot in garages and bedrooms, office suites where they have shelving along the walls, and the victim will be pinned, especially when they have shelving like here and an office table, or the what do they call this? In the dining room, we have one. I forget what we call it. But if that's there and it's got the china in, and if it falls over on the dining room table, you could get trapped underneath it. So this is another one that we need to be able to check for. And as you can see, this is all just furniture and everything falling over, because the ceiling, other than that one panel, it's basically all intact. Then we have the V void. And this is what a V void looks like. This is actually where the from up above, whether it was some kind of ceiling or that has fallen down, or it could be also where it was two bookcases up together and they fell down and they trapped the victim. And then individual voids. A lot of people, they say, hide under the table when there's an earthquake, or go into the doorway. Don't go into the doorway. The door can slam shut and get your fingers trapped between the door and the door frame. So heavy, sturdy furniture, people could be under there. And they also may be buried, because as you see, this bookcase right here could fall over from the bouncing. The couch could come, and you may not be able to see this young person that was down here, even though he's with his father or uncle or whoever that may be. Search systematically. First thing you want to do when you come up to, and we're going to use single family residence because we're going to act as though this particular incident happened at 5 a.m. So you're still at home. So first thing to do is to call out to the victims. Let's find out where they're at, and if they're able to come to your void. We'll get into that. Use systematic search pattern. Stop frequently to listen. That is very important, especially with someone who's been hit over the head and they may be moaning, or it may be a young child and they're traumatized. Also, we want to triangulate. We'll talk about that. We want to mark searched areas and document. And we also want to report the results, and whether that's to your neighbor, whatever the situation is, about whether it's CERT or NTP. As I said, calling out to the victims. That's the first way to get your walking wounded out of a building. So you knock on the door. Is anyone that can hear me? Come to the sound of my voice and listen and wait. Because if somebody hears your voice, there's two options there. They'll say, I can't, I'm trapped. Or they'll say, where are you? Or I'm coming. And they will walk out. And then you could direct them to the triage center. So remember that. Anyone that can hear me, come to the sound of my voice. And that's the first way of calling out to the victims and getting your walking wounded moving. Or they may not be, they may not have any bleeding. They may not have, nothing happened to them other that they're in shock because of what has happened. And by saying that, it may trigger them to get walking and moving. All right, it's always a two-person search. One person always orientates to the door, and I'll explain that on the next slide. And always with a two-person rescue, or search, I should say. We're not in rescue yet. A two-person search, always maintain visual, voice, and depending upon the situation, this came actually from Captain Gross, who said possibly tethered during the search. And we'll talk about that when we actually do a search and rescue drill. But those are the three things: visual, voice, and possible tethered during the search, depending upon the situation and what it is. But Captain Gross wanted me to include that in the slide to make sure that you're aware of it. Okay, the way you search, whether it's a single story, two-story, three-story, it doesn't matter how many floors. It's always bottom up, top down. If it's a multi-story, and always right wall, right shoulder. So as you see with the footprints, so when you enter and you say when you first do the vocal to find out if anybody's there who will come to your voice. If you don't hear anybody and it's light damage, we then start our right shoulder is against the wall. So as we see, we come around, stop here, look and listen. Shine your flashlights throughout the room to see if there's anybody there. Hear nobody, then we come out to here. And remember, right shoulder, right wall. Stand here, look around the room, because somebody may be in the middle of the room. Then we work our way around. And remember, when we're here, our second search person is right here. We go around the room, look, listen. If there's a closet along this wall, check the closet, especially if it's a child's room. We want to make sure of that. Also, if there's a bed that looks like a small child could climb under, take a second to look under it. So you've searched from here, stopped and listened from here, stop and listen from here, continue around, and then we do the same thing over and over again. And then all the way through the house. But then what happens if we come to a stairwell? Well, same thing. We go down the stair or up the stair, depending upon it. Does everybody understand that? Right wall, right shoulder. And stop, listen.
Can you clarify that on the stairs? Do you continue down the stairs before you complete the floor you're on?
Depending on, okay, so if there was a second, say this was the first floor, and say this is the front door. But then we get here and there's a stairwell going up here. And it takes you to the same kind of floor plan. We would then go up the stairs on the right side. And then we would, so say right here, we're coming up the stairs, like the stairwell was here. Coming up the stairwell, right side, then start the same pattern over, same routine. Does everybody understand that? So all you're doing is doing an exact thing you did on the first floor. Always remember, right wall, right shoulder. And that's how you do it. As I said before, we listen, stop, periodically to listen for taps, movements, voices. All that can happen, and that's what we want to listen and look for. Because we may see, and that's why when I was saying when we were here and looking into the room or looking into the room, we may see some movement here. So that's why we want to do that. I talked about triangulate. So if there's 2 or 3, but generally the teams of 2, you use your flashlight. So one would be here, one would be here, and you could focus on the room to see where, if there's any victims in the middle of the room. And then also use the incident response team system on how to treat and deal with them. Search markings. This is what happens before you enter the building. And we're going to see some different search markings that I want you to be aware of. But this is the one that we will be mostly working with as light search for CERT and NTP. Always tries to go on the right side of the door. It should be at least 2, if not each section. So this should be almost 4 feet so that you can see it from the street. We start with a single line, diagonal line from left top to right lower. We put I put CERT ID here, but whatever ID you're assigned, whether through your NTP program or through the CERT, when you're called out, will be given IDs, and that is to know who's entered this door. We also enter the date and the time in, and we use military time. Does everybody know how to use military time? Okay, well, I see one person. I'm sorry, Doreen?
Yes, school bus driver, ex-school bus driver.
Okay, great. Well, for some of you who don't know, it's real easy. So in the AM hours from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., you just put the number. So it'd be like, if we're talking about 8 o'clock in the morning, time in, it would be 0800. But what happens if it was at night? So if it was 8 p.m.
20.
Exactly. And the easiest way to figure that out is to take the time and add 12. So if it's 8 p.m., add 12, that's 2000 hours. So it would be 2000. Or if it was 1 p.m. in the afternoon, add 12, it's 1300. And that's what we do so that anybody going by, other search teams know that CERT 1 is inside and they went in at 8 o'clock in the morning. But now we see that we're search team 2, we're going by and it's 4 p.m. Do we know that something's wrong here? Because should they take that many hours to search a building of a single family residence? No. So we know to get on the comms and say, hey, we're here at such and such address. We have CERT team 1 who's entered the building at 8 a.m. It's now 4 p.m. in the afternoon and they haven't marked their time out. So that would be one reason why to be calling in for that. So, but we have the ID, date, and time in. And then when we go to leave, and so that's when we get to the end of the search, we put our diagonal line from right top to left lower, area searched. So if it's a 2-story building and you guys only did the first floor, then right, first floor. And then why was it you couldn't go into the second floor? Stairwell damaged. So you also want to put any hazards that were here. And then also any victims. Did you find 1 victim, 2 victim, or even put on there, no, 0 victims? That way we know that, hey, we may not have to go search in this home again because there were no victims. Or if there were DOAs, then also put the number of deceased here also. So search markings. Now, this is one that you may see, and this is the one we used a lot in Hurricane Alley when we were out there. And they do it a little different, but it's been checked off that it's been searched. But this is one of the types, and also because normally it's supposed to be a box, but this particular one they circled means that it's hazardous to go inside, so do not go inside. But anyway, upon entering a search area, mark with a slash, write your team ID, time and date. Upon leaving, complete the X, write victim numbers, timeout, and also areas searched. Anybody have any questions about that, about what the symbol looks like? Here it is again, another example. As I said, here's CERT 23. They went in February 15th. They went in at 14:30. What time is that?
2:30.
2:30 p.m. exactly. And they were out at 15:15. So they were out at 3:15 p.m. They searched floors 1 and 2. And like I said, the stairway to floor 3 was unsafe. Go ahead, Sherman.
I have a question. So
Yes.
on your one chart, you said top, bottom, or bottom, top. What does that mean?
Oh, let's go back real quick because that's very important. You mean top, bottom up, top down? Is this what you're talking about, Sherman?
Yeah, that's my question. What does that mean?
Okay, bottom up. So you're going to start here. So you're always going to go bottom. So this is the bottom floor. You're going to go up, and you're always going to go right shoulder, right wall. And then, like I said here, if the stairwell was here, we're going to go up, do the same thing, and then come top, and then we're going to do the down. And that's what we're going to do to get down. Does that answer your question?
I guess I'm still confused. If you've done it all the way up, then I guess I don't see how there's a down if you've already done everything on the way up. Or maybe
You still have to come down, Sherman.
But you've done that second floor, haven't you, when you went up?
Right, but you still have to come down.
Okay.
What Terrence was saying is that when you encounter what Terrence was saying is that when you encounter a stairwell, you go up the stairwell instead of completing the floor you're on. So you're working your way up each time you encounter a stairwell, and then when you come back down, you're going to complete the floor that you're on that you didn't complete yet.
Thanks, Patrick.
Oh, that clears it up. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, second searches are not horrible things to have.
No, it's not. But also, we want to do the greatest amount of good with the time we have, though. So thanks, Patrick, for saying that. I guess I didn't understand. I've been doing this for so long. It's like, well, we go up, good, and then we keep going and then down. So yes. So I should have said there was a stairwell here, and that would have answered that, Sherman, because then we would have gone and we would have been on the next floor, done all of that, then come back, and then go back and continue the down part. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there we go. So we have that, and also if we have victims, and where did we move them? Where'd they go? They went to medical operations. Sorry, but that's what MedOps is. Interior markings. Now this is when we're in either a high rise, or when we're in the stairwell, or in apartments where they have a stairwell and they have doors to each floor. We do the same thing. They're called interior markings. So start where you exit the stairs, make a slash as you enter. So we put our slash, but we do it this way because that means we're going into the doorway, and then make a slash when you exit. And we'll see that on the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, it's another one. So search markings are often confused for building markings, structure markings. Lets others know you entered and exited safely, document the findings, and I said, mark large, at least 4 feet. Here's the ones. I guess I moved the slide. I apologize for that. Now, this is where we're in either a large apartment complex or an office building. And you come out of the stairwell and there's two hallways to go to. So we're going to always, because we always do what? Right wall, right shoulder. We start on the right side. So we put an arrow which way we're going and we make one slash. And we do right wall and we go all the way around, come back, finish our X, and then we start this way and do it. And then when we come back, we finish the X, go out the stairwell, complete the X in the stairwell, and continue up. Does that all make sense to everybody now?
There's a question in the chat regarding using spray paint to mark, or what do we use to mark with?
You can use spray paint, but with the toxins and all that, I use a lumber marking crown, a construction crown. That's what I personally use. I carry them in different colors, and they'll make a large enough mark on the wall, on the house, that you're able to see them from the street. And they're basically permanent. Unlike chalk, if you use chalk, the next rain or water can wash them off. So that's why I use that. But you can, as you saw in that picture, they did use spray paint. But then again, there is no time, but they didn't enter this building as it shows here, as you can see from the roof and also the entryway. This house was probably in the Midwest, and it had a tornado come through. But that's what I use. I use a construction crown, and it works very well, and it marks on everything. Did that answer the question, Patrick?
Whoever was asking in the chat.
Okay.
Diane was asking about the spray.
Okay. And that's what I use. You get them at any big box hardware store, you know, the orange or the blue, or even regular small hardware stores have it. Now, you may see from time to time, you'll see where, as I was talking about earlier, they've done their X, they've done the CERT Team 6, that, gas off, they had 2 dead, and now they have the big red box around it on this particular one. And that means do not re-enter. So just mark it down that it was, as one of the locations you were at, that we did not enter the house because it said do not re-enter. And that's what you'll see, and they use that. And just like this one, they have to use a circle.
Is there a difference between the circle or the square?
I know when I worked the Midwest, this is what they were using. When I was in New Orleans, they were using this. When I was in Texas, they were using a modified version of this. So it's on the jurisdiction, but here with LAFD, this is what we're using. Although you may see from other jurisdictions, because when there's a major incident and they bring in resources from other states through FEMA, they may use some of it. So that's why I have different ones in this presentation. So you can say, hey, I remember that. But as to our operations and how we do it, this is what they're looking for. And this is what we will do.
I meant the circle or the square or the box around it, saying it's not safe to enter. Do they
we use the box. And this is what, with LAFD, this is what we are doing, the red box.
So whether it's a circle, a box, a triangle, it doesn't make any difference. It means you don't enter.
Right, if it's around the information.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you for saying that, yes. But for LAFD and what we do with our resources, it's the box around it, so. And remember, document, because if you don't document it, it didn't happen. And we want to keep complete records, both of removed victims and victims who remain trapped or dead. And here they're going through the search team had gone through and they're looking at the list and making sure that they have everything. So always remember, document it. Always document it, because otherwise it didn't happen. Rescue operations, primary function. Now we're getting from the search part of it to the rescue part. Always create a safe rescue environment. Lift objects out of the way. So like when we were looking at where it was the small V void, quite possibly we could lift that out of the way. We use tools to remove objects. We remove debris. Triage or stabilizing victims, and also removing survivors. Those are the things that we do during a rescue operation under light or even moderate, but it all depends upon the moderate. We don't do it in heavy. So creating a safe environment, maintain rescuers' safety always. Remember situational awareness. Triage in lightly damaged buildings. Stabilize and evacuate victims quickly from moderately damaged buildings. Also remember our walking wounded. So we're able to say, if anybody can hear my voice, come to my voice. So we want to make sure of that, and never attempt a rescue from a stuck elevator. That is definitely LAFD's job to do that. The elevator won't fall. They have safety mechanisms in it, so they will not fall. So they're okay in there. And then which method do we use? Well, it all depends, you know. General stability of immediate environment, the number of rescuers available, strength and ability of rescuers, and also the condition of the victims, because sometimes it may be better that they're left in place and you bring additional resources to them. So it all depends. That's situational awareness, sizing it up and seeing what it is and communicating. Leveraging cribbing, some of my favorite stuff. So let's talk about some what it is. So lifting, some terms we're going to define here. Lifting, using a lever to lift an object. Cribbing is using beams to stabilize something that we have lifted. Box cribbing, arranging beams in a box configuration to stabilize heavy objects. And we'll look at that. We'll look at the different ways, the one that the LAFD actually teaches us, and other ways of doing it that other organizations do it, but I want you to be aware of it. And remember, if we lift an inch, we crib an inch. So we're always making sure of safety. And we'll go into that. We'll look at some pictures and what I mean by lift an inch, crib an inch. Also, always crib, even rapid lift and pool type rescues. So we may have it where we're lifting to pull a victim out, but we want to make sure that our safety cribbing is in there. Even if all we're going to do is a rapid lift and pull, we don't want it to come down. And we'll explain all that. Different types of cribbing. So we have the cross-tie cribbing up in the upper left-hand corner. And that is the procedure that the Los Angeles Fire Department will teach you once we go back into in-person training, our quarterly trainings. We will generally do this at Fire Station 88 at the training center. But that is the way we do cross-tie. So you will see that in action. Then there's the 3x3 cross-tie, which other agencies use. There's cross-type platform, which is the middle left. Triangle cross-tie, that's the one in the middle right. And a modified cross-tie. And they all have different ways to be able to use depending upon the situation. But the Los Angeles Fire Department wants us to learn the cross-tie, which is the upper left hand, and that's done with 4x4s. And we'll show that in a second. So this is what a lifting cribbing crew looks like. We have, we'll start from left and go counterclockwise. We have a crib person. They're the person who's in charge of placing the cribbing, and that's these beams right here, underneath what we're lifting. So as they start lifting that up, we want to immediately get a piece of cribbing under there. We have a group leader who has situational awareness and overlooking, and also helping with what is going to happen. We have the lever person. They're the ones with the bar and the that's a fulcrum right there. And that's what helps to be able to lift heavy weights. We have another crib person on this side because we want to keep it even and level. And then we have our medical care or victim removal person. So if this was a rapid pull, this person here, our crib person. Oh, and by the way, this is the victim, by the way. Didn't want to leave them out. So we would say we're going to do a rapid by lifting this. The crib person on each side would put a crib underneath it, and they would pull the victim out. That's a rapid. And then they would lower this collapsed wall back down on the cribbing after the victim has been pulled out. Any questions on that? Anybody? So we know we have a group, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least a minimum 5 people based upon the rescue, not including the victim.
Terence, I interrupted with a question. In that last slide, is the leader responsible for the team safety as well?
Yes, that's why they're there. Remember I said situational awareness? That includes the safety of the actual team, yes. So let's just, from here, situational awareness, team safety, they go hand in hand. Sherman, was it you or I didn't?
Yeah, it is I again. The question is, if this is search and rescue, do we have the time to do these things? I guess, are we more assessing, or do we have time to crib somebody?
It all depends. But these are the things, right now, we're just going over what's encapsulated in search and rescue and what you may encounter and what we're doing and the techniques. So there may be, it may be, because what happens if you go through, say you're assigned to one whole block of your neighborhood, you go through your whole neighborhood and the only thing you find is this one person down. You call comms, you let them know what you found and what do they want us to do? Well, the first thing is to make sure that this person's is breathing and there's no major bleeding. Then the second thing is to find out what comms wants you to do. But this is what goes on in a search and rescue. And this is what lifting and cribbing is about. And this is one of the things, if you go to a CERT refresher, is the Los Angeles Fire Department will include that as training for you.
Yeah, I'll say that on the drills that I've been at, and the exercises that I've been at, usually there's the damage assessment team is going and they're doing damage assessment. They don't go and stop and help people, you know, even though it's very difficult to leave somebody. But there's a second, usually on activations, there's a second team that's going out and doing the living and crifting and all that stuff. So
Right.
Your job is to damage assessment, because if you're spending a half an hour tending to this one victim, there's 5 other people you could be letting MedCom know that need help. So
Right.
If your job is damage assessment, you need to do damage assessment. And if it means leaving somebody, that's what you have to do, because your job is damage assessment. And just let comms know, and then they send out a team to assist that person with the cribbing equipment, because you don't have cribbing equipment with you. You're damage assessment, right?
Thank you, Jeffrey, for that. Yes, and that's true. But I'm giving the 40,000-foot view of what goes on in it. So as Jeffrey said, and that's what we had talked about earlier when I was trying to get Patrick to explain the 2 teams. And he wasn't there at the time, so we had moved on. But yes, Jeffrey's absolutely right, and we would have touched upon that when I asked Patrick. So this is an example of lifting and cribbing. What does anybody think about it? Be honest.
I don't know if I'd be standing on top of a cribbing.
That's the first thing.
Situation.
Why are we standing on the victim? And this, and I hate this, but this is a picture that was on a CERT unit that they were bragging about their lifting and cribbing. But let's start critiquing it, okay? First thing, why is he standing on the victim? Because otherwise, why would we be cribbing and lifting and cribbing if there wasn't a victim underneath there? So why, and also it's unsafe. Let's look down here. Our cribbing, why is this piece of cribbing angled? Because it's in the wrong position. It's unsafe because it can shoot out here and this side could collapse. Also, remember when I talked about lift an inch, crib an inch? See this person right here with this piece of cribbing here? That piece of cribbing should have already have been underneath here because they've lifted that up more than 4. That's almost 6 inches right there. And they could have put the cribbing in there. Also, I don't know what this guy's doing. And so it's not in a position, because one thing we want to make sure is that our hands are free. This piece of cribbing is out as far as can be, so it can be gently slid in here. But this is the one thing here. Also, why do we have a third cribbing person on the back side if we're working on this side? We don't want anybody on this side, because what happens if this pops out, hits him, and this collapses, and say it's a bigger one? So this is a fail all the way around, and we want to make sure that when we're talking about it, that we're using safe procedures to be able to do it. So the first thing right here is him actually standing on our victim. Secondly, we have here where our cribbing is not secured and it could possibly fall out of the way. He is in a danger zone here. This cribbing should be more down here and ready to slide straight in. This one should have already have been in there. So does everybody see what it shouldn't look like? And that we want safe, because this could get somebody hurt or killed. And that's what we want to avoid. Especially if this is, now when you're at Station 88, when we're doing training, these will be concrete slabs. It won't be a piece of, this one looks like just 2x4 with some kind of plywood on it. We actually practice with actual concrete, so that you could understand the safety procedures, and not only that, how concrete actually feels and works. So that's what we want to do, and that's what we do. Also, when we're moving anything, we always want to avoid strength moves, think safety, visualize and verbalize. You always want to communicate. So here, the team leader who's right here, why aren't they communicating? Hey, we got a problem here. We have a problem here. We have a problem here. We have a problem here. You're in the danger zone. We need you over here. We need to get safety. We all need to stop. We got a crib here, and we got to go back to this side and reposition. So that's what we need about communications and verbalizing. We want to use proper techniques. Back straight, bent knees, keep the load as close to the body as possible, and push up with your legs. And that would make for a good lift. Now we're going into different patient carries. Remember, let the walking wounded walk. So remember, we had talked about it earlier. If you could hear my voice, come to me. Have them come to you. A one-person assist can be used when victims need help. But for the most part, we want them to walk on their own, even if they have to, if they're hobbling along or that, they'll still be able to go. So let the walking wounded wound. So let's talk some of the other patient carries. We can use a blanket to drag a victim. And actually, one person can pull another person if they get them onto the blanket, and they would log roll them onto the blanket and they could pull. And the weight isn't bad, but remember proper technique. Patient carries. We could use a chair to carry up if it was in a tight. So say if we were in a library and there's all the shelves there and we got to get a victim out. Well, using a chair to carry them with a chair carry would be able to get them out. And all we do is have the person sit in the chair. Somebody grabs the chair from behind. You squat down and you lift, and the other person grabs it from the front between their legs and they lift the chair up together. And we'll practice that at one of the quarterly trainings. Two-person carry. This is real easy. It helps the rescuers to maintain good control over the patient. As you can see, you're in between the legs of the victim. You grab on the behind the knee on both sides, and the other one, while you have the patient with their cross arms, you get underneath, connect, and then you lift up. Does anybody have any questions about any of these lifts so far?
Yes.
Yes,
This last,
Sherman.
the two-person carry, then would that person be laying flat when you lift them, or he's sitting up, or does it make
No,
any?
you would get them into, well, they would be proned out or in the supine position. You'd either get them, if they're in one position or the other, you'd want to get them so that they're laying on their back, and then that's a supine position. Then you would help them to get up so that they're more in a sitting position. And then you go where the one gets between their legs, the other one gets behind, and then you're going to bring them up. Doreen, you have a question?
Would you have to, what kind of injuries would you make sure they don't have before you try this type of rescue?
Well, one, if they have a spine injury, you don't want to be doing this, okay? But say if they had a broken femur, you want to get them out, because with a broken femur, and that's your thigh bone, if the femur is broken, they could be losing lots of blood. Or if they have a pelvic injury, where they have a fracture in their pelvic bone, they can actually be losing lots of blood. So we want to make sure to get them out. So something like that, you would get them out. But if they had a spinal injury, we wouldn't be doing it, unless for if the house is on fire, but we wouldn't be going in there. But if there's some danger that we need to get them out, then we would do it. But other than that, spinal injuries and that, we let them where they lie, and we'll get other medical care there with a backboard. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now let's talk about building sides, because the fire department and most jurisdictions, fire, whether it's volunteer or that, we have designated sides to a building. It's the Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. So when you're in front of a house, that's your side A or your Alpha. The side on the left side of the house or building or whatever the incident or building site is, that's your side B or your Bravo. The back side of the incident is your Charlie side, and on your right side is your Delta side or D side. But we know it as the Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. So if you're working with the fire department and they say, oh, run over onto the Bravo side and go see what's going on, now you know which side he's talking about, or she, depending upon who the captain or the chief is. So we know when they say, or if they're around the block and they say, go to the Alpha side of the building on the next block, that's right behind us, you know they want you in the street. So did everybody understand that the front side's the Alpha for the A side, Bravo's the left, Charlie's the back side, and Delta is the right side. And with that, questions? Wow.
Currently, Terrence, I missed a question you were asking me.
Who's talking? Oh, Patrick?
Yeah.
I just wanted you to explain what the new NTP program, because I mean, I read the documents, but I'm still reading the documents. Oh, right there. Damage assessment team and the incident response teams.
Yeah, so when we first start, we mirror a lot what the fire department does. So when we first get set up, if we have a fair number of rescuers available to us, we want to get an idea of how bad this situation is. So you want to do a damage assessment. This follows what the fire department does, which is called a windshield assessment, where they literally drive their neighborhood, their first in area, to see how bad it is. And they'll drive past a burning building because they don't know what's worse beyond it. Once they get an idea of how bad it is, now they can figure out an action plan and figure out where to send their resources. So the damage assessment does that, exactly that. We send them out. It's supposed to be a quick 1 hour damage assessment for each direction. If you encounter something, you report it, you triage it, you stabilize it, and then you have to move on. So you might
And you document it.
yeah, document it. Yeah, absolutely. But the main thing is reporting it back to staging, so staging can then get an incident response team out to it. But if you have, say, someone who's bleeding severely, you're going to stop the bleeding or attempt to stop the bleeding. You're going to triage and stabilize as best you can and say, okay, an incident response team is going to come out and help you, either transport you to the hospital or to medical TARP or something like that. Then those are going to be small teams of 3, a team leader, a radio operator, and a scribe. The incident response team is going to be a bigger team that comes out that has more resources and more time. At that point, you might be doing something like extracting a victim, cribbing, and doing a search of a building. Those teams will be either 5 or 7. You still have the team leader, the radio operator, and the scribe, but now you have you have a responder pair or 2. And that when we looked at Terence's count for the number of people you need to crib, that's 5, which aligns perfectly with a small incident response team.
Great, fantastic.
If I could chime in here a second, one of the things that I've seen a lot happen on incidences is people, because we're all caring human beings, people go out on teams, whether it's a 3-person team or a 5-person team, and they go out and then they see a situation, they see 2 people hurt, and they break up the team. And the problem with that is that when you break up a team, you break up the synergy that you have. And if you have one person going over the left to take care of somebody else, that person may get damaged and has no way of letting people know. And I've seen that happen time and time again. And we've got to, no matter how hard it is, we've got to keep the team together and don't break the team. Call for a second team. If there's someone damaged, call for a second team.
And that's why we do odd numbers. So that initial damage assessment team, it's a team of 3, and you never go anywhere without your partner. So you can't break up a team of 3 because there's literally you don't have 2 pairs there. So that was done intentionally.
Okay, and
Calling for a second team.
right. Okay. I'm looking at some of the comments.
There's one I couldn't answer. Someone was asking, is there a standard length for cribbing?
Yeah, it's a 4x4x2. It's actually, it was in the slide. Oh, let's see. Yeah, but it's a 4x4 post, and they're either 2 or 3. We use 2 feet long. But some other departments do use, let's see if I can get to the slide. Yeah, they use a 3 foot. So the Los Angeles Fire Department, they use a 2 foot, a 4x4. And then I see that. So yeah, so that is what we use. And they also have heavier duty beams, but that's usually with the USAR and the heavy duty rescue. So Sherman wrote, is the arrow for clarification the photo only? Are we talking about the arrow when we were doing the floor searches? Because the arrow is
You had
there.
an arrow going down each hallway. And I imagine that's just to say once you went one way and then you went the other, so.
Yes, that's what the arrows are for. So that in case something happens to them, with the other search teams that come in and see that the arrow's going one way but not the other, and they saw the time in, they know there could be a problem. And it does happen. Mitchell asked, we leave the dead where we find them, correct? Absolutely. As I said earlier, they've had it before in incidences where foul play has gone off. And so, yeah, until the either the coroner or the police department determines the cause of death, yes, the deceased would stay there. Okay, that's what Patrick wrote. Okay. Who supplies the lever in Fulcrum? As Patrick says, some people have it. The fire department has it also, depending upon the team. And also the Fulcrum is nothing more than the 2 foot by the 4x4. That's actually your Fulcrum. And once we start into quarterly training, sign up for it and we'll teach you all about it. Can you make cribbing out of a wooden fence? No. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because maybe an emergency, but the problem is that wooden fences are out in the weather the whole time. And maybe the first time you go to lift, it snaps and it comes falling down. Or say you've done 8 inches. So it's a 2 cross, then a 2 cross that's 8 inches up. And what happens if now that piece of concrete, because the wood is so brittle and it splinters and it falls down, it could kill somebody. So that's why we try not to. And we use wood specifically for it. When we've gone over.
Where would we get the cribbing then?
Like I said, the fire department has it. Are we putting those in the boxes?
No.
Okay, because I know with my neighborhood council, we actually have cribbing and we have the bar.
For the staging area kits, they're really designed to be the first 3 hours of operation. So
Okay.
designed to be lightweight. What we haven't started talking about, which is a longer term plan, would be disaster bins that would service multiple CERT teams or multiple neighborhood teams. And then those would be something that you have a larger bin, like a Connex box, that can then have the cribbing in there and a lot of other resources.
Yes. All right, but yeah, but then again, after a major earthquake, maybe some of the home centers and they may start cutting up 4x4 beams into 2x2 so that people can actually do it. But I don't know. I know it's happened when I've been in other states on search and rescue operations. And then we also, the local jurisdiction had it and FEMA brought it in also. So those are things we would look at too. But the only thing is using a wooden fence, there is the problem that it can splinter and create more victims.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a USAR guy actually said that we could cut up a fence.
I mean, in an emergency, yes, but if you're, yes, but we side upon what our training is, and our training says we have the equipment to do it. If not, we note it and report it. And if we're on a team where we're cribbing, the fire department would be supplying, as at least on the search side, the CERT trailer would be out there and the trailer's full of cribbing, and we would work that way through it. And depending upon what area we are actually working in. So, gas leak on the glass earlier. Stacy, I don't understand your question. Stacy, where are you? Oh, there you are. You're up in the corner. Hi, Stacy. I'm trying to read your gas leak on glass early slide.
You showed an early slide where it looked like there was water beads on the glass, and you said that that would be an indication that the room was filled with gas.
Natural gas, yes, natural gas.
Does it take a particular weather condition to cause that to happen? Or?
No, it's just from the gas itself. Actually, I asked that same question because pre-pandemic, the CERT call out team was trained by both LADWP and Southern California Gas on how to deal with like wires down and also with gas leaks. And that was one of the first slides they showed us about it, was in an earthquake. So if you see it on the window, and it doesn't matter because it's the moisture in the gas when it fills up the room that would cause the condensation.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to make sure to err on the side of caution, because you know sometimes the windows develop because of the change in temperature, where it's hot inside the room and cold outside. You'll get the same condensation. But after an earthquake, it's more probable that you will have a gas leak due to a broken pipe, especially the pipes that are connected to the stoves, because the stove is heavy. The pipe coming out of the wall is fixed, and the stove bounces across the room because of the earthquake, and it breaks the connection. So that is what you would be cautious about.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Do I see anything else? How do you come by cribbing material? Well, before an emergency, before an incident happens, have some in your house. Keep it in your garage if you have a garage. So that all helps. So any other questions? Wonderful. Patrick, where do we go from here? Because we're done, and we did it basically in an hour and 30 minutes, like it was planned.
Yeah. Perfect timing. Next month, our third Wednesday of the month training will actually be on why am I blanking on basically like mental first aid or psychological first aid. We have a guest speaker coming to talk about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that should be a good one. That's been requested by a lot of people.
Are these slides available anywhere?
The ones we just did?
Yeah.
Yeah, be more than happy. Patrick, you have it, so do you want to disperse it? Or...
Yeah, if I ever get caught up on getting the videos up on YouTube, they'll be linked up there as well. But we're way behind on that, so I'm not going to promise it.
Well, if you actually, I could say if you put your email in the chat, I'm going to save the chat right now, and I'll be more than happy to send you the presentation. So let's make it happen. All right.
I have a quick question.
Sure. Who's I don't see.
Diane.
Oh, hi, Diane. How are you?
Good. So I'm still confused about how teams are put together. Like, you know, once I've completed my LAFD training, what happens? I mean, how do I become a part of a team?
Where do you live?
I live in West Adams.
Okay. Oh, there's already a team there. So, are you getting our emails?
No, not from West Adams. I think Chin said that they're a little bit east of me, like they're east of me.
Yeah, well, I guess West Adams is actually quite a bit of a large area. What we do have a couple staging areas already out in West Adams, in the West Adams Neighborhood Council area. Which neighborhood council are you in?
I'm in UNNC, because the West Adams Neighborhood Council isn't actually in West Adams. That's the problem. It, you
really?
know, yeah, they took that name. They took that name, you know, but they are not in historical West Adams. They're west of it. So, you know, West Adams actually goes to about on the west side, I think West Boulevard, around there. And then goes east to I think, you know, somewhere near USC or something like that. But so that's not really my neighborhood. So like if I were to go to a staging area, I don't know where I would go. I couldn't walk there, that's for sure. I couldn't walk to the West Adams staging areas.
Yeah, we're slowly expanding and growing. Do you get my emails?
I
She
don't,
she got here.
if you,
Find out about us today.
yeah, email.
But is it from like CERT coordinators or?
I'll tell you, it is from reminder, oh darn, okay, LAFD cert continue education.
That's my email.
Okay,
So yeah, as we're expanding, we're UNNC I think is requesting a neighborhood team program. So hopefully we'll get one up there soon in your area.
Did Laura Myers contact you, Patrick?
The name doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, because she's over there.
Yeah, she might have contacted Chin though.
yeah, I think that, well, we had a meeting with UNNC, Chin and I, because they have a safety committee now. And they were trying to figure out how to, how to put things together. I strongly encourage them to get together with the West Adams Neighborhood Council and take their lead from them because they seem to have a pretty good neighborhood program. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I just need to know what I need to do. If like
the way we've been working it, we've been looking for people to liaison with the neighborhood council, because the neighborhood council does have outreach capabilities, and we prefer someone who's not on the board to be that liaison. And looking for potential team leaders. So if you're interested in being a team leader, we would use you as an anchor point and actually build the team around you. We wouldn't burden you and say, okay, this is all the stuff you need to do, good luck, and then you'll never hear from us again. We're going to be there every step of the way. We're going to hold your hand on it, but we need you to be that anchor point because you're the one in the neighborhood. You're the one with the connections. And then we support you and help you build the team.
Okay, let's talk.
All right, great. I'll send you my email address.
The one that I got already?
No,
that's a no.
Yeah, well, I'll send you mine so you can directly email me.
Okay.
All right, then. Well, I appreciate everybody's for your time. I hope you learned something. It sounds like in the chat you did learn something, and that's my job, and I'm glad I did it. So
can I get a round of applause for Terence?
Great job, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a while since I've had to train because we've been in lockdown. So.
Well, good news is officially the lockdown, CERT battalion coordinators can now start having community meetings. The first in-person class has been scheduled in April. It's already full.
I signed up for that.
And then we're looking to, they're asking, the CERT unit is asking for locations to have future trainings. So if you're interested in hosting a training in your area, you know of a good place that we can do it. I like to have larger classes, at least 50 people, but the minimum requirement is 25 from the CERT unit. I think that can be a waste. So I prefer at least 50 people in a class. But if you know of any places that we can host a CERT class, let us know and we'll get the ball rolling on it.
That's fantastic.
Patrick, this is Sarah. I had a question about in terms of CERT training locations. Have you ever worked with LAUSD and any other school sites? Is that a doable or
I've heard it's better. I had a nightmare experience in Eagle Rock where Eagle Rock High School wanted to host the CERT class. The principal wanted to host it there. And then LAUSD got involved and said, okay, that's going to be like $5,000.
Well, it was Beyond the Bell who actually, if I remember correctly, because they were handling the sites after school.
Maybe that was a different incident.
Oh, okay. But that's where we ran into problems with LAUSD was Beyond the Bell, because it was after hours of the school day, and that's where all that came in.
It is something that we're interested in doing. We wouldn't say no to it. However, we don't have high hopes that it's going to happen. Charter schools, on the other hand, have been, we've had several CERT classes in charter schools. Jeff.
Yeah.
The Burbank library system has two libraries. The one in downtown can hold about 95 people. It has a stage and a projector and a screen. And because I'm a stakeholder, I get it for $50 a day, basically.
But that's in Burbank.
That's in Burbank. But that would be good because it's easy from the Pasadena, Glendale crew, and the whole Valley crew, and it's also a straight shot from downtown up to 5. So it's actually pretty good from almost everywhere, you know.
Yeah, well, we're LA City Fire, so if
We
we
stay in the
are
city.
able to expand upon with the neighborhood team program, expand into other areas, maybe we'll do it as an NTP thing. But for LAFD start, we're within LAFD boundaries.
Yeah.
Doreen has her hand up. Doreen? I see her hand up there, Patrick, but she keeps muting and unmuting herself.
Maybe she's got a audio problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I've got to go.
Okay, well, I
you,
appreciate
everyone.
everybody. I got your emails. I'll be sending that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.